How you all doing, everybody? It's me, Crazyfrankie, and I'd like to welcome you to my Week 12 4 key game picks. Before we talk about week number 12, quick thoughts going around the NFL whip around from week number 11. There's no more undefeated teams. Give the Bills credit. They beat, despite not having Coleman and Kincaid, the Bills upset the Chiefs to give the Chiefs their first loss of the regular season. And when I look at this football game, when I look back at that game, there was a lot of question marks regarding how much pressure, even though this was only a regular season game between Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, how much of the pressure does this ease off of the Bills? Because let's be real, the Bills have owned Patrick Mahomes in the regular season, but when it comes to the playoffs, Patrick Mahomes owns them. So I don't know if it's going to, look, by the looks of the way of these two teams, and obviously given their current records and they're currently leading their respective divisions, we're going to see them again in the postseason. Let's be real. I don't know if it's either going to be in the divisional round or possibly in the AFC Championship. I don't really have much to say anything else regarding that game because I felt like Josh Allen needed to show something against this Chiefs team, and this was despite the fact not having his two main wide receivers, Kincaid and Coleman, but Amari Cooper came up big in that game despite he was having some wrist problems himself. I think on the other side for the Chiefs, obviously when they get Pacheco back, they're going to be a completely different football game. And there's no question they might be more dominant down the stretch. Pacheco's supposed to come back pretty soon, probably in week 14, possibly from what I've been hearing, from what I've been reading. Maybe next week. We're not really sure yet. But I guarantee you that the Chiefs want the home field advantage. There's no question. They definitely want the home field for sure. But I don't know if having that home field could end up biting them, because despite that they've been to the Super Bowl with the home field advantage in the AFC, remember the Bengals beat them about 3 years ago to get to the Super Bowl when the Chiefs had the home field. So anything could happen because I really think that the Chiefs defense has some vulnerabilities. And I don't know whether or not if any other NFL team, regardless if it's AFC or NFC, can expose that. It's been really, I praised a lot of Spagnuolo's defense throughout the season, but maybe, just maybe, there's some damage that maybe the Bills found in their defense, and other teams might be finding that formula. I really don't know. Let's see what happens down the stretch. Bills showing some resiliency, and let's just see what happens in the postseason. And how about the Detroit Lions once again laying the smack it down on the Jaguars? It's really hard to say if I want. Look, a lot of pundits right now are putting the Lions now as a Super Bowl favorite. I would ease off a little bit on that. Remember, this is a franchise that has not won anything. And when I mean by anything, no NFC championships to speak of, very little NFL championships during the history of the franchise. I would kind of ease off because they did lose Anzoni, one of their defensive linemen. Their defense is starting to get a little thin now. And now with him being out, possibly for the rest of the regular season, he probably won't be back to the postseason. There's a lot of question marks regarding that defense, even though their cornerbacks and like Branch and Kirby Joseph, they've been making some great, fantastic defensive plays. But still, they're not. Even Zania Smith was able to get to Mac Jones and really just gave a sack. See, it's still an issue for the Lions, especially if they're going to have to especially if they run into an offense that knows how to run the ball or mobile. Despite they beat Jordan Love a couple weeks ago, but I'm talking about in terms like the Chiefs or the Ravens with pretty good running games that both those teams have. So I would not be praising the Lions just yet right now. If you're a Lions fan, you need to treat that with caution because their defense is dropping like flies, and that could be a great concern going down the stretch. When I look at other teams, what happened? Packers escaped on a blocked field goal against the Bears. The Jets are a mess. They lost to Anthony Richardson, the so-called quitter, and the Jets are a mess. Cowboys are a mess. They lost to the Texans. They got beat down by them. And how about the Chargers almost choking again? Anybody who knows me on a personal level, I'm a Chargers fan, and they were almost chargering again. They gave up. They had a first half lead, and then they almost choked the game away. But fortunately, the defense stepped up, and the Chargers finally got a victory out of a game that normally I see as a Chargers fan, they would always lose. Jim Harbaugh's really gotten that team into some sort of different mentality. Let's just see what happens down the stretch. They're getting close to a playoff picture, and they're currently one of the 3 wildcard spots at the moment. Anyways, there's a lot that went on in week number 11. We need to get into week 12. Very few slates in week number 12, so it's going to be like I did a few weeks ago. I'll throw in some easy games, and then I'll throw in some difficult games here. So here are the 4 key games here. Beginning with key game number 1, it is the Lions versus the Colts. Lions open up as a 7-point favorite, and that is about right. I want to see what Anthony Richardson and that Indy offense can do to that Lions defense. Now, I think for the Lions' sake, they're getting luck. They're kind of getting at a point now in the season where they got some good, easy stretch, but then now comes the hard part. They got some tough opponents coming up right after the Colts. I don't know about the Bears, though, because obviously the Bears' offense, they're a mess. I mean, they'll probably get through the Bears on Thanksgiving, but the Colts are kind of an easy opponent. This is really an easy pick. Richardson was only 20 of 30, 272 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions in a very lucky win against the Jets. The Jets were actually not considered much of a threat all season long. They were a mess. Jared Goff, 24-49, 412 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, and a total beatdown on the Jags. I'm picking the Lions here. I think that Anthony Richardson is going to come back down to reality, back down to earth. The Lions have the better offense. Defense-wise, they're getting a little stretched in, but the Colts, I don't really see their offense much of a threat in terms of the way the Lions can really, because they got great cornerbacks. I'm talking about Brian Branch and Kirby Joseph that can make plays. And I guarantee you, I think it's going to be a long day for Richardson. I don't think this game will be a blowout. The Colts might make it a football game, but I think the Lions pull away in the fourth quarter. They should beat the Colts here. I'm picking the Lions at -7 here, and it's kind of an easy pick on this one here, so I'm going to pick the Lions at -7 over the Colts. The Colts need this one really to try to keep pace with the Texans, but in reality, they're coming to a stretch now where I think they may be slowly falling out of contention just to win their own division. The Lions are a much better team. I'm picking the Lions -7 over the Colts. Key game number 2. It is the Eagles versus the Rams, the Sunday night game. Jalen Hurts was 18 of 28, 221 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. Mostly the running game with Saquon Barkley was really the factor last week against the Commanders. They beat them down in the second half after they struggled in the first half against them. Now for the Rams, they had, believe it or not, they had a tough time with the Pats. Even though they still ended up winning, but still though, they had a 2-touchdown lead going into the fourth quarter, and they almost gave it up. Matthew Stafford was 18 of 27, 295 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. The Eagles open up as a 2-point favorite in this one here, and I would say that's about right. My question marks for the Rams is, how healthy is Nakua? Because he really looked like he really got hurt in a touchdown diving catch he made in Foxborough, and he was in pretty good amount of pain. So right now, he's kind of questionable going into this game because really, Matthew Stafford, to make this a competitive game, he needs all of his receivers to make this a pretty good game against the Eagles, because the Eagles are getting on their groove now. They got Saquon Barkley. Obviously, that running game is going to be a factor with him. But you got to wonder about their defense, though. They've been struggling. They almost let a Jaguars team come back on them. They struggled in the first half against the Commanders, but luckily in the second half, their offense took over and basically beat them. I think this game might be a football game here, but I'm leaning towards the Eagles here because I just think that running game is going to kill the Rams defense here. And I'm going to pick the Eagles based on Saquon Barkley. I think that running game and whatever Jalen Hurts, if he gets out of the pocket and runs for the ball himself, the Rams defense has struggled a lot against the run. Other than maybe the teams they were supposed to beat, that easy teams that that have been able to beat them and all that. But I just think, to me, the Eagles' running game is going to be a much big factor for them. I like the Eagles in this one here. I just think their running game with Saquon Barkley, and if Jalen Hurts starts becoming mobile out of the pocket and runs for the ball himself, and obviously the tush push, the Rams defense is going to have a hard time stopping that. I'm going to pick the Eagles in this one here. I think the Eagles will slightly beat the Rams here. It should be a football. This might be a football game for sure, but I just think that the Eagles are a little bit better than the Rams are. I like the Eagles in this one here at -2, Eagles over the Rams. Key game number 3. It is a showdown in the NFC West. It is the Cardinals versus the Seahawks. I was looking at the lines for this one here. Obviously, a lot of the odds makers have it at different points, For this purposes, this right now, currently I have this at pick'em status for now. They'll probably be a favorite in this one here. Some people had the Cardinals as a favorite. Some had the Seahawks as a favorite. So for this video here, this game is really you pick them. Because both teams are the Cardinals technically have the better offense than the Seahawks do. But luckily, with Geno Smith, Geno Smith won the football game all by himself against a 49ers team that's really struggling. Geno Smith was 25 of 32, 221 yards, and 1 touchdown. He ran in for a touchdown, basically beat the 49ers right in the end, and he was picked off once. Now, the Cardinals were on their bye week last week. This was from week 10. Kyle Murray was 22 of 24, 266 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. A couple things that we'll keep in mind here between this game. Now, obviously, DJ Metcalf being back for Seattle helps Geno Smith in terms of the passing game. But really, they have trouble running the ball. That's one of the factors I think that the Cardinals have a slight edge in that. When you look at Colin Murray and you got Marvin Harrison Jr., I don't know if he's going to play in this game. He was questionable. He did kind of get banged up against the Bears. So I think he's kind of questionable to start in this game. But it wouldn't surprise me if he plays because, Marvin Harrison Jr., the rookie from Ohio State, has really become a factor. He's really come into his own in only his rookie year, and obviously he's one of the favorites to become Rookie of the Year. Not only that, you get Connor going in the running game. That's also been very helpful for Colin Murray in his last few games, and that's the reasons why they're in first place in the NFC West. I'm picking the Cardinals here. I just think that the Cardinals slightly have the better offense here, but it would not surprise me if between the Cardinals and Seahawks, this is a football game because both these two teams, even through bad years, these two teams really go at it in between each other. They've had some pretty good football games in the last 7-8 years. So it wouldn't surprise me if this is a pretty good football game here, but the Cardinals just have the better offense, and I'm picking the Cardinals to beat the Seahawks here. This game is pick'em status, so there really is no clear-cut favorite in this one here. I'm picking the Cardinals to beat the Seahawks. And finally, key game number 4, I wouldn't go this week without talking about it. It is the Harbaugh Bowl, otherwise known as the Ravens versus the Chargers. The Ravens are a 2.5-point favorite. Probably will go to 2. Maybe 1.5. I'm not too sure about that, but it wouldn't surprise me if it goes a little bit lower. Now, Lamar Jackson was 16 of 33, 207 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, and really just he's really one, if there's one team that Lamar Jackson always has the most trouble beating, for some reason it's the Steelers. The Steelers have owned them in the last 4 NFL seasons. I'm literally scratching my head. Of all NFL teams, why does he have trouble with the Steelers the most? Given the fact that he's been given the last 2 seasons, from last season and this season, he's been given a pretty good, decent football team. And yet they still have trouble beating the Steelers. Now, obviously, the rivalry between them is very heated. And they're very hard-fought games, but still. How do you lose to the Steelers last week? Especially given the fact that really, their defense really is it's true that the Ravens defense has some issues. They're having trouble stopping the run. They're giving up way too many big plays. And I think that's one of the reasons why they could be in for some trouble here if they lose to the Chargers. Now, the Chargers last week, like I was mentioning earlier in the video, they had to hang on for dear life just to beat the Bengals. There's some issues going on with their defense as well. Herbert was 17 of 36, 297 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. They really escaped last week. The Bengals probably should have won that game because given the fact, well, obviously that McPherson couldn't kick any field goals last week, that to me is surprising. But really though, this is why I like the Ravens more in this football game because their offense, and if they get Derrick Henry going, the Chargers are going to have a hard time stopping the run against Derrick Henry, and it wouldn't surprise me if there's a game that Lamar Jackson needs to show up, it's this one here. Now, the last time the Harbaughs coached one against each other, well, you have to go back to the Super Bowl during the time when Jim Harbaugh was coaching the 49ers at the time. When I look at this football game here, the Ravens just have the better offense in this one here. I think the Charger defense is going to have a hard time stopping Derrick Henry. If they get that running game going, it's gonna be a long game for the Chargers. But I think this will be another great football game on Monday night, for sure. Should be a good one. I think this game's definitely going to go back and forth because really, I don't trust the Ravens defense, nor do I trust the Chargers defense as well. This game is going to go back and forth. I could see that happening. But the Ravens, I think, are going to pull it out. I think the Ravens slightly have the better offense. I'm going to pick the Ravens here. It pains me to say that because I would love to pick the Chargers here as a fan, but I can't be I'm not going to be that biased here on this video. The Ravens slightly have the better offense. I'm going to pick the Ravens at -2.5. Ravens over the Chargers. All right, everybody, that wraps up my 4 key game picks video for week number 12. Please check the description below for every one of my picks for all the games in week number 12. And I'll talk to you guys next week when I do my Thanksgiving edition video. Next week's Thanksgiving, and I'll be sure to get that video going next week after the games from week number 12. So I'll talk to you guys then next week. Take care and enjoy your football weekend.